Hello there, this is Cathy from Greven & Co. We are accountants and financial planners. Today I'm talking to Sam Cole from Anreps. But before I do, just want to let you know that this video is recorded for general information only, general purpose information. So anything you hear, please don't take it as a piece of advice. It's more general factual information. And if you do need advice, reach out to myself. We will post Sam's details at the end of this video. Thanks. Now, here's Sam.
So we're located in Melbourne Street. So we've got an office in Melbourne Street in North Adelaide, but we look after properties all across Adelaide. So literally we manage properties down to as far as sort of Sellex Beach or Dinga, as up to Gawler, and then up into the Adelaide Hills as well. So basically sort of broader metropolitan Adelaide. And Anreps, I've had the business for about 12 years.
Oh, right, 12 years. I wasn't aware of that. There you go.
So quite a long time. I think it might even be a little bit longer, but definitely it's around that.
And you know your specialty. I know you through property management, but you also do sales as well, don't you? So what are you seeing at the moment with the market and residential sales? What are you seeing as being something that COVID-19 has impacted?
So on the sales side of things, what we've seen is just a lot of nervousness more than anything else. We've had a mixture of, there are still transactions being carried out, but we've had quite a few vendors who are going to put on their properties on the market, just push pause. Because they're nervous about what may happen, and that we can't run open inspections at the moment, and that obviously unemployment levels and all the caution of the economy. So we've seen quite a few vendors just push pause and just say, look, we just want to wait a month or 2 months or 3 months, and we don't really know yet how long that will be. So the number of stock coming onto the market's certainly slowed down considerably. We have also seen a lot of buyers vanish from the market. And by that, I think just because of, again, nervousness, we've had some properties on the market that would normally sell very quickly, but the number of inquiries and buyers has dropped considerably. And what
about for landlords, like property investors?
So again, with landlords, what we've seen again is a lot of nervousness on both sides of the landlords and tenants. So we have had, I guess what we've seen, and I guess sometimes it gets lost, tenants obviously have had employment issues, so are losing their jobs or losing their hours. So we've had quite a number of approaches from tenants sort of seeking some financial assistance. But then we've also had issues with landlords, because landlords, I think it gets lost sometimes that a lot of landlords are just mum and dad type small investors. They're not Rupert Murdochs that own, billions of dollars of property. They own 1 or 2 properties and they're trying to get ahead. And we've had landlords that have lost their jobs. So, they're in this, predicament where they've got a mortgage, they've got an investment property, and they're nervous about meeting their obligations. So there's been a lot of nervousness. We've also had, which I guess is you always get sometimes, we've also had some tenants who have seen it as an opportunistic time and perhaps haven't lost work or haven't been affected, but they're still seeking some rent relief. So there's been a pretty broad spectrum. So the first thing we've probably done to both landlords and tenants is just told them to breathe, almost just take a breath. We're here to help you. We'll work with both you as a tenant and the landlord, but let's just, go through it slowly. Because there's one of the things with property management is the government's obviously come out with lots of different guidelines and changes, and with tenancies, it was probably something that they talked about early, but then it took a long time for them to actually bring some guidelines into the market. So that was also one of the things. Just take a breath, and we'll just work through it as the issues arise.
Right, and with the code of conduct that the federal government brought out, does that relate to residential? I know it does commercial in terms of evictions and things like that.
Yeah, it's the code of conduct which they brought out was more in relation to to commercial tenancies,
Right.
And that was how that almost referred it back to the starting with if you are allowed, or if you comply with the JobKeeper guidelines, then there's a process to go through for landlords and tenants for for commercial properties.
Right.
They did give some instructions for residential tenancies. Probably the biggest one was that for 6 months, tenants will not be able to be evicted due to economic stress or not being able to pay their rent.
Right.
But the thing it's that the Residential Tenancies Act is a state-based legislation. So the federal government gave some guidelines, but then it was left to the states to implement the changes to the legislation. And South Australia has done that and implemented some legislative changes. Probably the key ones are, firstly, that a tenant cannot be evicted for a 6-month period due to not paying their rent. If they've suffered sort of hardship through the COVID virus. The others relate to, so you cannot do open inspections on a rental property, and also the other thing, which is a little bit it's understandable, but it's challenging, is that we're not able to do physical inspections of properties, like quarterly inspections, to sort of see.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a few others as well, but they've introduced sort of a raft of different changes. But I guess the one that's got the most press is that tenants cannot be evicted for 6 months.
Right.
And whilst we haven't directly seen it with tenants, there have been some different agencies that I've spoken to where they have literally had tenants stopping, not paying their rent and just saying, well, there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, cheeky.
But there is a process that SACAT, which is the tribunal essentially, have given some guidelines about what you need to follow if someone is not paying their rent. And the other thing is that it's really important that you work with, if you are getting issues with tenants not paying rent, one, obviously work with the landlord closely in relation to maybe coming up with a solution or a payment plan, but the other is to understand your landlord's insurance, because a lot of the policies have got very different approaches to the virus and how they're handling rental arrears. Some are just treating it as business as usual, and if your tenant gets behind, as long as correct protocol is followed, then they will cover the insurance for lost rent. Whereas there have then been others that have said, no, it's a pandemic. It's something that is not covered by their policies. So that's really important to make sure that you understand, what landlords, one, that try and ensure that they had insurance. And that was one of the first things, going back about 6 or 8 weeks when it all just started. We sort of advised our landlords just to make sure you've got current insurance and what it actually covers. What their insurance is and what it covers, and then following the procedures that are required for their insurance.
Good tip. Yeah, good idea. So in terms of Anreps, what sort of things would make you and your business more attractive to a potential investor who's thinking at the moment of maybe buying or currently has a property? Have you got some things that that differentiate you from other property managers?
We like to think so. And we went through some changes a couple of years ago, really looking at things that could benefit landlords essentially in property management. And so one of the points of difference that has been a really good transition for us and really benefits landlords is that every Monday, so today's Monday, case in point, we distribute rent if rent has been paid into our trust account from a tenant, we distribute it to the landlord every week. Doesn't mean the landlord always gets their money every week, but if it means it gets into their pockets quicker. Traditionally, agencies have done it either at the end of the month only, or maybe twice a month, which essentially means that money sits in an agent's trust account, earns the government interest, and is really no benefit to anyone. So we took it upon ourselves to say, look, we want to get money into the landlord's account as quick as possible. And so every Monday, if rent has been paid from a tenant, we will transfer that to the landlord's account. So, they've got to use it. They can use it for their bills, paying their mortgage, sitting in an offset account,
And COVID-19 is a perfect example of when landlords need their money.
Exactly, absolutely. So that's something that's worked really well, and I think it's a real point of difference. The other thing that philosophically, I'm not someone that likes locking people into contracts, and so again, traditionally in the marketplace, agents will have a 12 or 24 month agreement with a landlord, and they will sometimes rely on that to almost lock people in. I've got a firm belief that you've got to be able to provide really good customer service, and it's providing that good customer service that'll keep a client with you. And so we have a no lock-in policy. So people that come on board with us, they're free to leave at any time. We are by no means perfect, but I like to think that sets us apart and keeps us accountable. We want to make sure that we're providing really good service to people. And just I think a couple of other points of difference. One is, and this is becoming a little more common in the industry, but we've got an online portal. So, landlords have got access to all their information, whether it's their statements, routine inspections, when the next inspection's coming up, so they can log on and get access to that data as well.
Perfect. I love it. Music to my ears. And finally, have you got any tips for tenants or landlords in this time that can help them get through if they're feeling stressful or financially stressed or anxious? And it's an uncertain time. So
it is very uncertain times, and like I said before, there's a lot of nervousness that's out there. One is keep the communication lines very open, and that is whether you're a tenant or a landlord. Talk to your property manager or talk to your tenant if you've got that direct relationship, and then try and understand each other's situation. Don't rush into a decision. I've heard of different situations where a landlord may have just said, "Oh, look, you can have 3 months free rent," or a reduction in rent. Whilst it's good to be supportive, don't just rush into a decision. Just investigate what support is available for both your tenant and the landlord. And as you would know, there's a lot of government support for both landlords and sorry, not so much landlords, probably more for tenants with JobKeeper and JobSeeker and the additional COVID payments. But also investigate, if you're a property manager or a landlord, not just having to do a reduction in rent, but one of the things that they're really encouraging is a payment plan. So it may be, okay, well, as a property manager or a landlord, we understand that the tenant's got some issues for a period of time. We might allow them to pay a lesser rent for a couple of months or 3 months whilst their business is shut or that sort of thing. But then perhaps after that shortfall, then put a payment plan in place. And you do this from the outset to make up that rent over the next 6 months or period of time.
So it's more of a deferment than
absolutely. And that's a little bit in line also with, I guess, what the banks have been able to do for the landlords, is that they've offered to defer mortgage payments. I mean, the landlord still has to pay it. I mean, sometimes that gets lost. I think the banks come out as heroes, but all they're doing is deferring the payment and charging interest, but it's just not it's a cash flow issue rather than a saving, and I think that gets lost. So if you can have a similar arrangement with your tenant, then you're providing support, but in the long run no one's losing out.
No. Perfect. All right, Sam, thank you so much for your insights. That's always good to get. I'm going to put your contact details up on the screen, and people know how to contact you if they need more information and advice. Thanks so much.
No
Yeah,
problem.
no worries. Good on you.
Always good to catch up, Cathy.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, that was interesting. I find that tenants and landlords are, from a residential point of view, are finding themselves very much in the dark about what things need to be administered in regards to their tenancies. And as Sam pointed out, landlords still have to pay their mortgages. So even though having a rent relief or rent deferral, it's all has to be accounted for. So what I got from the Code of Conduct was that landlords and tenants have to negotiate and negotiate fairly. So the Code of Conduct by federal government doesn't apply for residential so much. It's the state government. So I'll put a link to what Sam alluded to, Cat, to this video so that you can then do more exploring and research. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Bye.